Okay, Allan Crocket, are you in the room? Allan, where are you calling in from?
I'm in Arizona, Southeast Arizona.
Well, welcome. You're a repeat presenter here. Our presentations are always off the charts and get some good views. And so we look forward to hearing what you have today. Tell us what your topic is today.
Well, we're going to talk about the void and how to fill the void
Okay, cool.
and what
Well,
that looks like.
let's jump into it, Allan.
Good. So we'll talk about the void and nature's clues for navigating life's most critical transitions. And really what this amounts to is there's a space between what was and what's next, and how are we going to fill that space? And the thing that we see is we'll talk about some voids in nature and see if we can learn from them. But we get voids in all different areas of our lives, and whether that's because we've quit a job or retired or sold a business, whether we had a death of a loved one, a spouse, a child, a parent, uh, there's all kinds of voids that happen, and it's what we do in that space that was what was between what was and what's next is what's really important. All right, so void in nature. This happens to be a place that I took a picture of. It was native rangeland, and it was purchased by a farmer. And of course, the farmer, the first thing he wants to do is plant something in it. And that's a 5-strand barbed wire fence. You can see the top 4 strands, and the other one is completely covered in erosion. But that's what happens with voids in nature. We see erosion. If you look in, anytime there's flooding, that water is not clear, it's dirty, it's murky, it's muddy, and that's a problem. Nature will do anything it can to fill a void, and that is very pretty. But yet, on the other hand, when we see voids filled in nature, usually what most people would call those voids being filled, the plants that they see there, they would call them weeds. And it's really not weeds, it's forbs, and nature's doing the best she can do with what we've given her to work with. So we have to look at biology in the soil and organic matter in the soil and moisture in the soil and soil temperature and some of those kinds of things. But if there's nothing there for nature to work with, nature will do the best that it can with what's available. And typically that's going to be forbs, or as most people would call them, weeds. And then we don't like the weeds, so we spray the weeds. Well, then what happens? We just create this vicious cycle where we get more weeds. And really, that's a true principle. It doesn't really matter where you're at in the world, whether you're in Arizona or the Arctic or Asia or the Antarctic or anywhere before, between, and beyond. True principles will give you the same results any place in the world. The law of gravity is a good example of that. It doesn't matter where you are. You step off a chair, you're going to come down. You step off a table, you come down. You step off the roof, you come down. That's just the law of gravity in action. And so when we look at this, when we talk about correct principles, that's what we're talking about is nature does not like a void does not like to have bare ground, and it'll do anything it can to try to fill that. There's other kinds of voids that happen in nature. A friend of mine ranches up in central Arizona, up in the mountains, and they had a big mountain lion on their place. And the mountain lion, a big tomcat, would kill, 4 or 5 calves a year at most, sometimes 2 or 3. And they were happy with that because that mountain lion, very territorial, kept other mountain lions out of his territory. But then word got out that there was a huge mountain lion on the ranch, and people want to kill a big one if you're going to kill one, and somebody killed it. And then the next thing that happened was 4 or 5 younger tomcats, mountain lions, moved into that area, and their predation tripled. So there was a void. The big tomcat was killed, and now a whole bunch of little ones moved in. And before the void, they were losing 2 or 3, maybe 5 calves a year. Very small percentage for the number of cows that they ran. But with 4 or 5 and 6 mountain lions in there, it tripled the amount of uh, death loss that they had. Even lack of livestock on rangeland can create a void. I mean, that is a void. It can create a void in your bank account if you don't do something. But even the void, if we are doing some kind of good grazing management practice and we move cattle out of a pasture or paddock and into another one, there's a void in the last one, but nature will grow and recover. And if we've done our job right in the first place, that recovery will be even better than what was there before. So nature likes to fill a void. It does not like a void. Um, and the same thing in our lives. If we're not conscious about how we choose to fill a void, something else will come in. And most of the time, it's going to be things like weeds. When we look at business, a void in a business is created when somebody retires, somebody moves to a different job, somebody quits, somebody dies. You know, a key employee or a key leader in the business dies. Something happens there, and that creates a void or a vacancy. And if we look around at businesses, and we've seen this happen in major companies and smaller companies, but anytime there's a void like that, if that void gets filled too fast, too often, it leads to a downfall in that company because speed does not necessarily equal wisdom. So sometimes we'll see misalignment or confusion or a decline following a void in that kind of a business when it's filled too rapidly. So we have to be careful in our own businesses when something happens to make sure that if that void needs to be filled, we filled it the way that it needs to be filled, the way that we want it to be filled. Um, so unfulfilled bills, voids can become a drifting thing, or it can be something that we can build on and grow from. One of them is just decision gaps. If a leader leaves a business, what happens with decision making? If that leader's been making all the decisions and no longer there, that creates a void, and it creates a problem for the business because there's a gap there in decision making. And even leadership vacuums, especially if you're the leader of leaders in your business, if you have different managers that manage different parts of the business, and you're the leader of them and you're gone, there's a vacuum there. And if you've been really hands-on in that leadership and now you're not there, what happens next? Sometimes even the culture within an organization can drift and drift dramatically when we see a leader leave a business. And then for ourselves, sometimes there's identity confusion when we leave. Uh, and sometimes for the business, there's identity confusion. If the business is built around Allan Crocket or Jared Sorensen and we're gone, now what's the identity of that business? And who takes over? So we have to be real conscious about that and what we do in the interim when that void happens. Um, we have personal voids that fill our lives, and that happens to all of us, whether we recognize them or not. Death obviously is the one that probably is the hardest to adjust to. We have the death of a loved one that may be unexpected or premature, we think, or early, we think, and then there's a void there. And what do we do with that void? Um, but it's more than that. It's gosh, I remember our children were homeschooled, most of them, until they went to high school. And when my son went to high school, there was a big void. There was a void there because I didn't realize how much he was doing to help me out. And all of a sudden he was gone, and I found myself extremely busy. Uh, and so voids happen, and how do we fill that void? And what do we do with it? So maybe here's some things that a personal void might look like and what we need to consider. Our routine maybe disappears. If we're used to getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever time it is, and we have breakfast or we go out and do chores and then we come back in and have breakfast and then we go to work, there's a routine. And we followed that routine day after day after day after day, year after year after year, and then all of a sudden that routine disappears. Now what do we have? We have a void, and how are we going to fill that void? And what do we do there when it happens? And again, we already mentioned identity, but there's an identity shift. When there's a void, if you retire from your business and you're no longer Jared Sorensen, the rancher, or Allan Crocket, the rancher, or the consultant, or the coach, or whatever that is, whatever your title is, you retire and the identity's gone. And what does that do to you? And what does it do to the way you see the world? That can be really huge when our life is tied to that identity that's tied to the business. Sometimes our purpose feels vague. We've been busy working and creating a business and making it profitable and regenerative ag that we've talked about here, uh, that was a huge purpose that drove us forward. And now that purpose maybe is gone. If we retired or if we sold a business or something, now what do we do? And that can really lead, with a lack of purpose, it can lead to depression and other things that even worse than that. Our time used to be very structured. We talked about that earlier, that we get up and maybe do chores, come back and have breakfast, go to work, very, very structured. And now all of a sudden we've got lots of time. Now what do we do with that? And there's that void. And if we don't do something with that void, something's going to fill it in, and it will probably be weeds or forbs. We might refer to them more as weeds in our own personal lives. I remember my grandfather telling me that when he retired, he got more tired the first year in retirement than he ever did when he was working. And we had a grow yard, and my dad wasn't using it at the time. And so my grandpa went and bought a bunch of calves and put in that grow yard and started feeding them. It gave him something to do. It gave him purpose again, a reason to get out of bed and do something rather than just get out of bed and now what do I do today with all this time that I have? So his time became structured again. Now, I'm not suggesting you got to go buy calves and put them in a grow yard and take care of them, but there needs to be purpose to our lives whenever that void happens, or we'll fill it with something, or it will get filled with things that don't meet our purpose and our values. I ran into a friend of mine, it's 2 years ago now, I think it was in May, and I had a grandson. He had a couple of grandkids that were participating in some kind of program. And we walked out of the theater together where they had performed. And I just saw him there standing around visiting. And I said, Mac, how are you doing? He says, good, Alan, how are you? And I said, I'm doing terrific. I says, how's retirement? Because he had sold his business, I don't know, 2 or 3 years earlier, and a very successful businessman. Uh, his routine had disappeared. His identity had kind of shifted. Maybe his purpose felt vague. I don't know that for sure. I know his time was really unstructured from the way it had been before. And this is a guy I've known my whole life. I says, how's retirement? And he said this to me. He says, it's just a word, Alan. That's all it is. It's just a word. And as we talked and visited a little bit, and I read between the lines of some of the things he was saying, I realized that in his unstructured time, what happened is it got filled with weeds. That void got filled with weeds, and his purpose became very vague. And he was no longer living the life that he had lived before, full of purpose and liveliness, and it was just busyness now. So business became busyness. He retired, sold his business, and now it was just busyness. And that's not a really good way to spend our time and energy. Um, in the ranching and farming community, we have people that are 80 and 90 years old with sons that are 50 and 60 that have not turned the operation over to their son, and they are scared to death of retirement. And the reason is because they've seen a neighbor retire and that neighbor died within a year of retirement. And what happened is all of a sudden purpose is gone, time is unstructured. We get up, what do? I don't know, let's watch the news. Well, the news is over, now what do we do? Well, let's watch some more. Let's find a program. Let's just sit on the couch and veg. And too many people do that, and then death is next. So people are scared to retire because they don't know what to do next. Um, and that's just one of the voids that happens from time to time in our lives, and we have to be aware of that. Again, if we are conscientious about it, we plan for that, and we plan what we're going to do. And sometimes we think, well, I'm going to travel when I retire, or I'm going to improve my golf game, or I'm going to do this or that, whatever it is. And we retire and realize that, gosh, there's so many hours in a day that I can play golf, and so many days in a week, and now I'm bored. Or there's so much traveling that I can do, and I want to get back home. I want something more to do. And that could even be somebody that's 35 or 40 that sold a business, and now what's next? What do I do next? There's a void, and I'm lost. Achievement no longer defines value. When we're working, we're running a business, and we're looking at profit and loss statements, and we're building things, and we're building soil and building grass and building maybe a cow herd. The genetics fit our program and low input, and they function on what we have for resources in front of them with minimal inputs. And we do all that. And that was achievement. And we found a lot of satisfaction in that. And now all of a sudden that doesn't define us anymore. That's gone. And playing checkers or chess uh, on a park bench gets old pretty fast. So what are we going to do? One of the things that we realize in life is transformation needs space. And this is where transformation can happen or where drift takes hold. And in the case of my friend Mac, I think this is where drift took hold of him. I think this is where all of a sudden, instead of having purpose, he just got busy. And retirement was just a word, and that's all it was, just a word. Uh, if we're going to transform our lives and our businesses, and we can go back to nature for just a minute and look at transformation in nature, and I think all of us have either seen it someplace or we want to see it on our own places where the bare soil is filled with maybe forbs and eventually some grasses, and hopefully eventually succession takes place in our management. And what happens, and we build a healthy ecosystem with lots of good perennial grasses there. And if we take that analogy, well, in essence, we've transitioned our management from something that it was before to something different today, this idea of regenerative ag, and we've transitioned, and now we see a transformation in the landscape. It has changed, and it's changed dramatically because of what we've done. And some of that may be because of what we stopped doing from the way that we used to do things. So when we look at our personal lives, this transformation that we're talking about, if there's a transition, as we transition from set stock grazing to some kind of rotational managed grazing, adaptive grazing of some sort, and see that transformation, well, as we transition from maybe it's Allan the cowboy to Allan the business leader, or Allan the business leader to Allan the retiree, or whatever that happens to be, whenever that transformation or we transition, there's an opportunity for transformation to occur. And if we don't fill that space or that void with something, it will just drift, and we'll see erosion, and it'll fill with weeds and all that kind of thing that we don't want to see happen. So that transformation takes space, it takes time, it takes quiet, it takes peace. Um, so let me just tell you a little bit about what I'm doing today. Um, Kairos telos, transformation begins. Kairos is a Greek word that means the right moment, and telos means a Greek word that means the ultimate purpose. And so this is where the right moment meets the ultimate purpose. And this is where we really have the opportunity to figure out what our ultimate purpose in life is and take time and transform our lives to becoming the person that we really want to be. And if what we want to be is a cowboy, then be a good cowboy. And my hat's off to you, go do that. But if you're looking at something beyond that and you want more, and you really want to transform who you are and what you are, that requires a mind shift, a change in the way we're thinking, uh, because what got you to where you are today won't get you where you want to get in the future. What got us here won't get us there. And so there has to be a transformation in this transition that we go through. And it really all boils down to quality of life. That's what I really help people with is having a better quality of life. And so when we look at quality of life uh, and filling that void, intentionality has to come to play. But quality of life has to be designed with clarity. And if we're not clear about the life we want, it will just become the life that is. And it won't be by design, it will be by default because we didn't take time to plan it and design it ourselves. It just happened. And to me, there's more to that. To me, there's freedom. And freedom is balanced with the impact that we provide for those that we serve, whether that's in our community, our church, our family, wherever that is. But there's a balance there with the impact that we can create around those that we serve. I think we need to have time and money in tandem with each other. They need to be reclaimed and not just spent. And so when we look at that, what does that mean? Well, it's one thing to have time. I've got lots of time, but I don't have any money to do anything. Another quick story about a guy I know that he's probably 85 now and retired from working for the phone company. And I saw him one time. He doesn't live in my community, but I've known him for several years. And I just ran into him in a store one day. I says, "How's retirement?" He says, "It's like being on vacation, but not having money to go anywhere." And to me, that's the time side of it, but no money to go anywhere, no money to do anything. And then the flip side of that is sometimes we're busy working and running a business and we're profitable. Had clients from Wyoming come to my office here, a couple of months ago and spend 2 days with me. And we looked at their business, very, very profitable business, but no time whatsoever. And she made the comment while they were sitting here, a couple, man and wife, she says, "I want to have time to go to church on Sunday." And she says, "I would really like to have time to go on some church missions." And they're 43, 44, somewhere along in there. And she says, "I would like to have time to do that. And I don't have time." And yet they're making money and doing a very, very profitable business. We looked at their numbers and evaluated that, and I'm plenty of money, but no time. So to me, you got to have both those in tandem. And one of the things is the follow-up story. One of the things that we did with them is you need to hire somebody, a key individual that is either a manager or a foreman that can run things for you, follow your lead and your direction so that you don't have to be there every day. And that person can run the day-to-day operations and allow you to do some of the bigger things that you want to do, including go to church on Sunday, including serving some church missions that you want to do. So again, time and money in tandem. If they're not in tandem, I don't think they service well one without the other. Purpose, rediscovered and redefined. When that void hits us, and if there's not purpose, we're going to drift. And that's what it'll be. And erosion will take place in our lives to one degree or one form or another. So defining that purpose or redefining it, rediscovering that is pretty important. And then relationships, repaired or reprioritized. Is there a comment?
You got a few minutes left there, Allan.
Thank you. So relationships repaired or reprioritized. I have a client that's become a friend of mine up in Canada, and one of the things he told me, he's had 5 or 6 successful businesses that every time he sells a business, he makes lots of money and he goes and starts another one, and eventually he's bought and sold, I don't know, 2 or 3 ranches now. And we were talking one day, he and his wife, again here in my office, and we were visiting, and she made the comment. I mean, she said it was agricultural marriage counseling, which I don't call it that. I just call it quality of life. Let's figure out what we want and create it. But he made the comment that in his prior work experience in his other businesses and the people that he associated with in those businesses, he made the comment, he says, at least half of my former colleagues are divorced and have no relationship with their children. And that's pretty sobering. What kind of quality of life is that we're so busy building a business and making money that we've lost what should be most important to us? So those are the anchors that I work on. Kind of to wrap up here, nature will always fill the void. The question is, will you choose to fill yours? Because you're going to have voids, and how you fill them makes all the difference. And if you don't fill them the way they ought to be filled, the way you want them filled, then they'll be filled just like nature fills the void or bare ground with weeds first, or forbs as we call them. But your life will be full of weeds, and you'll be running, doing this for somebody and that for somebody. At the end of the day, you'll just be discouraged because you don't have purpose in your life. You don't feel like you're accomplishing the things you want to accomplish. And that's what Kairos Talos is about. That's what my work is about, is quality of life. Doesn't matter what walk of life you're in, what business you have. It's really what you want and how do we get you there, and creating that and helping you create that. So, Jared, thank you for having me on today. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with all of you. If I can be of service to you, if anything I've said resonates with you, if you want to have a further discussion about what it might look like to work together or something, just send me a text is the best way. If you call me, be sure and leave a voicemail because I probably won't answer the phone. But if you send me a text message, tell me who you are. You heard me on Jared Summit, and you want to have a conversation, we'll schedule a conversation and just talk about where you're at. In 15, 20 minutes, we can kind of get a good feel whether or not it'd be good to work together going forward. And if it is, great. If it's not, great. So with that, Jared, I'll shut up and sign off here.
Well, we wish we could listen to you more. But Josh Adams is chomping at the bit and you don't want to keep him waiting. But so on the gift page, there's actually a free half-hour consultation for you. Allan, would you just maybe quantify that? Like, who would be the ideal person that would take advantage of that and schedule that time? Who do you feel that you could help the most?
So really, for me right now, Jared, the people I'm really working with are the people that are feeling that void, or they recognize that there's going to be a void in their life, and I want to fill it properly. So how do I do that? But it all comes down to quality of life. If you're working yourself ragged and you're making money, you don't have time, we can talk. If you have lots of time and no money, it probably yeah, I probably can't help you with that. And I just say, all right, well, help me fix my business so that I have more money. But and I've done that and been very successful in helping people turn their businesses around so that they are profitable. But the ideal client, the ideal person is somebody that, yeah, my quality of life is not where I want it to be. And again, time and money, purpose, relationship, that freedom thing. If it's not there where you want it, then we ought to talk and see if maybe I could help you.
Love it. Okay, thanks for that. I appreciate you being part of this summit, the lineup today. It's been amazing.